welcome. A couple of you still connecting to audio. Welcome on this Tuesday lunch break, maybe for you, depending on where you are. Maybe it's morning, maybe it's evening. I just wanted to say thank you for being here, spending some time with me and the others on this call. If you can introduce yourself briefly in the chat, if you feel like it, and let me know where you're joining from. It's always fun to see what geographic diversity this Zoom tool that we've all come to know allows us. And then once you've introduced yourself, just take a moment because probably you're coming from something and afterwards you're going to something and you've decided to take this time out of your day. Just take a moment to kind of just check in with yourself. And the way I like to check in with myself sometimes, because we're sometimes so much in the process of doing that we don't even take a moment to notice how we're feeling, what's going on with us. One thing I like to do is to just feel into how I'm feeling, notice, and think of one word that represents a little bit of how I'm feeling right now, right? We're all very complex and one word can't quite do it. But that one word just helps us to maybe notice something we didn't notice before. So if you feel inspired to share in the chat, I would appreciate it. It helps me get a sense for where people are, how people are feeling. And don't overthink the word. Whatever comes to your mind first is perfect. I love that we have people here from, Austria, Latvia, Tel Aviv, West Coast, Chattanooga, hi Lala, Dubai, Maui, hi Kalia. New York, Oklahoma, Miami. It's always exciting to me to see where everyone's coming from. So today we are feeling grounded and good and grateful and open and focused and curious. I'm frazzled. Back to school is crazy for me. I'm feeling it more this year than ever before. And trying to just stay calm. Stay calm and carry on. Hi, Jen, feeling grateful, open from Hudson, pleased from California. I would be too if I was at Hermosa Beach. Thanks for joining us, David. From Kansas, feeling distracted, caring for a newborn. Oh, thanks for being here. Do what you need to do throughout this call to juggle whatever you're juggling, but I'm so happy and grateful that you're here. Okay, let's get started. So today's talk is how to hold space for your inner child. And I want to first acknowledge that is a huge topic for a 1-hour talk. And so what I'm going to do is really just leave you with a couple of things. One, powerful practice, I believe, and a little glimpse into this whole concept of holding space. Now, holding space is kind of out there in the vocabulary, and you may have heard it, and some of you I know have been through facilitator training and know deeply what it means to hold space. Some of you might be really familiar with the term, and some of you might be like, I've heard it, but I don't really know what it means. So what I'm going to start with is just kind of a primer on holding space. And I have some slides, which I'm going to pull up because I find that these are always helpful for people. So how to hold space for your inner child. And so, what I want to start with is just holding space basic principles. And some of you I know are about to do the How to Hold Space course, which is a 7-week course starting in October. Some of you have taken it before. Some of you have taken it before and are taking it again because, as I always say, concepts are fine, but until you practice them, you don't really integrate them. And so with something like holding space, it is an always and forever learning and practice, constant. We're always raising our awareness and becoming more skilled at holding space. So holding space basic principles. When I usually think about holding space, I usually think about holding space for other people. So if you're thinking about it in your relationships, maybe you're a practitioner and you hold space professionally for people. Therapists hold space for people. Other practitioners hold space for people. But maybe you're a person who has relationships, right? You have a parent or you have a child or you have a partner. And holding space is a really important aspect of basically every relationship in our life. And so the basic principle of holding space is that you're allowing somebody to share what's in their heart and on their mind, and you're not interfering with that. You're literally holding an open space for them to be able to get something off their chest, share a frustration, share a sadness with you, and you're letting that come out without interference. It seems so simple, but it's actually pretty hard. It's pretty hard to do in practice. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where somebody, when you're telling somebody a story about something, and the first thing they do is they say, "Oh, that happened to me too." Or you're telling them something, and the first thing they do is they say, "Well, maybe you should do this." Or you're telling someone something and they're kind of distracting you, or they're trying to comfort you and they're trying to give you comforting words. And you're like, I can't even get my story out. I can't even get my words out. And so that would be an example of someone not holding space for you and doing a number of things that we don't love when other people do. But maybe if we're honest with ourselves, we also do. And there's a really good reason for us to do that. It's because it's hard to listen to somebody without doing something. So here are the holding space basic principles. The first thing is when somebody shares something with you, you sit with it and you don't try to change it, even if it's something you don't love. This happens all the time with me, with my children. When they're sharing something with me and I can feel myself becoming activated for all sorts of reasons, and all I want to do is make them feel better or help them or comfort them, and I have to resist and I have to say, this is what it is. I'm not going to try to change it. That second principle of holding space, notice. Notice any judgment or activation arising in you. A lot of the time, the reason we go and we tell our story or we give our advice or we interfere is because it's activating something in us that we're trying to comfort. And so rather than acting on it, we just notice it. Oh, interesting. That person's story is really activating my story about my mother, or my story about my relationship, or my story about my childhood. Okay, I noticed that. The third principle is resist, and this is the hardest one. Resist the temptation to fix or immediately do something. We talk a lot about this in the How to Hold Space course because this is the one that really trips people up. I'll ask people, are you a fixer? People will be like, no, I'm not a fixer. And then I'll ask them, are you a helper? And they'll be like, yeah, I'm a helper. I really like to help people. And so we have this urge, especially with the people we love, to go in and help them, to do something. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is nothing. Just listening. Just listening. Sometimes, I know I've been in this position and maybe you can relate. Sometimes you just want someone to listen to you. You don't want to hear how it relates to them. You don't want to hear their advice. You don't want to hear how bad they feel about it. You just want them to sit there and listen. And so that's the resist piece, where we just resist the temptation to feel the need to be helpful, to do something, and we just listen. And then the last principle of holding space is the receive principle. This one takes practice to believe, because what happens is when we just listen, what we realize is we are helping. We are doing something for someone. When we receive someone's truth with love, compassion, we just acknowledge it, sit with what it is. We notice what's happening inside of us, but we don't act on it. We resist the temptation to fix or immediately do something. What they receive is a container for their truth where they can say, oh, this just gets to be how I feel. And somebody isn't going to try and tell me to feel differently, fix it, comfort me, or give me advice. It's a deep act of love and service. It's very rare. when you find somebody where you're like, oh, I can just tell this person my deepest, darkest, ugliest, and they're not going to judge me. They're not going to try to change me. They're not going to try and do anything. That's a beautiful space to find yourself in. Okay, so those are holding space principles. That is a very, very, very quick recap of some of these principles, which I could talk about for hours and require a lot of introspection and deep thought and practice. But just for the purposes of today, very, very quickly, holding space principles. Okay, so this course is two things: how to hold space for your inner child. So I went through the holding space principles in the context of holding space for another person. That's how we usually practice it. That's a lot of what we talk about in the course. So what does it mean to hold space for your inner child? So first, I'm going to go to the principle of inner child. Again, there are, many year-long trainings to really understand the inner child and how to access the inner child. And we have 1 hour today. So I'm going to give you a brief overview. Some of you might be really familiar with this work, and some of you might know nothing about this work. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a brief overview and then a couple of resources so that if you're interested in learning more, you can go ahead and learn more. And then I'm going to give you one powerful practice based on this work that's very specific that we can work with to understand both the concepts of holding space and inner child in one narrow way. So this concept of the inner child was introduced by Carl Jung, and it's that part of you that remains childlike. So there's a whole literature about what's called parts work or internal family systems, the premise of which is that there are different parts of us. All of us can kind of understand this by saying, like, there's part of me that doesn't want to go to work on Monday, and there's part of me that knows I need to go to work on Monday. There's part of me that really wants to go to that party, and there's part of me that doesn't want to go to that party, right? We all have different parts of ourselves that want, think, believe different things. So when we're talking about the inner child, we're generally talking about that part of you that existed at a young age that we can still access now, that maybe didn't receive what it needed at a young age, but is still inside you, or that developed as a response to a circumstance in childhood. So I know that's very vague and very sort of conceptual, but let's narrow it down to see if we can access it through some very specific prompts. So the part of you that didn't receive what it needed, didn't receive the encouragement it needed at a young age, but is still inside of you, maybe you can access through the prompt of the parts of you that were told, don't be that. Don't be so. You're too. Why do you have to be so? Those parts of you that were criticized, either explicitly or implicitly, or just not celebrated in you. The parts of you that were not valued, not kind of maybe ignored, not praised. So you can access it by you're so, you're too, why do you have to be so? I'm going to give you some examples on the next slide. So maybe some of these sound familiar to you. You're too sensitive. You're so sensitive. You're too bossy. You're so bossy. Why do you have to be so angry? Why are you always sad? Gosh, don't be so aggressive. Speak up, you're too quiet. So I want to invite all of you right now to think about what would you add to the list? What was true for you? What were you told? And I'm going to stop my share for a moment. This is, of course, completely optional. Share if you want to, not if you don't. But what were sort of parts of you that were told, yeah, that part of you, not so much. Put that part away. I don't really value that part of you. Yeah, Christine, too emotional. I think too emotional is said a lot to girls, right? Too shy. Yeah, you overthink too much. You're too talkative. You're too much of a perfectionist. Don't be so different. Don't be so sensitive. Don't be so silly, right? And so these are parts of us that at a very young age, when we maybe didn't know better, we were like, oh, maybe I am. Maybe I am too shy. Maybe I am difficult. Maybe I am too silly. I should be less that. I need to be less that in order to get the approval, the praise that I want, the love that I want. Let me be a little bit less that part of me. And so now, maybe as an adult, we still feel that way. Gosh, yeah, I'm too sensitive. I should be less sensitive. I'm too shy. I'm too different. So this is the specific part of our inner child that we're going to look at. Yeah, you're too nice. Yeah. Be meaner. Be more of a jerk. But yeah, that totally makes sense. All right, so now that we've accessed these parts of ourselves, how do we access this now? How do we access our disowned inner child today as an adult? And one framework that I found really, really helpful is to think about 3 aspects of yourself or qualities that you like to show to others. So I'd love you guys to share this too. I'd love to hear this from you because this one's the easy one, right? This one's like the good one, right? Okay, so what are 3 aspects of yourself or qualities that you like to show to others? Personally, I'm definitely kind. All right, I'm going to take this down again. I'm definitely kind. You guys don't have to put all 3. If you think of one, like a part of you that you're like, yeah, I'm definitely this, and I like to show this to other people, and I like to be this. And it makes me proud that this is part of who I am. This part of me makes me proud, and I'm super unafraid to share it with other people. I'm kind. Smart. I believe I'm smart. I'm not afraid to show it. I'm proud to be smart. Trying to think of a third. Yeah, generous, Christine. That's a good one. Raw, creative, love it. Independent, confident, organized, generous, strong, warm. Yes, you are, Tess. You're very warm. Understanding. Yeah, like these are aspects of ourselves where we're like, this is the side of me that I love to show to the world. This part's easy to love. This part of me is easy to love. Playful, good listener, welcoming, sensitive, attentive. Yeah, real, spontaneous, easygoing, unique style. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. All right, that was the easy exercise. You ready? There's always the flip side. Okay, so the other side of the exercise is, what are 3 aspects of yourself that you don't like to show to other people? 3 things that you see in yourself and you're like, oh, maybe your inner dialogue says, oh, I wish I wasn't so. Or I hate that I'm so. Or this one's my favorite one. This one's my favorite one. I'm working on that. The part of me I'm working on, like you're a construction project. I'm working on that, right? Like it's yucky and it's ugly, but I'm remodeling it. So don't worry. I will work hard to get rid of it, minimize it, change it, shift it, shape it so that it's more in line with what I think I want to be. So thank you. Thank you so much for being so ready to share. I love it. Uncertain. Yeah. Jealousy. Yeah, that's one of mine too. That's going to be one of my executives. An overthinker. Yeah. Naive, envious, rigid, controlled, controlling, rigid, deep and awkward, angry, controlled, impulsive and anxious, passive, rigid, emotionally sensitive, vulnerable, sensitive, deep. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of these. And so here's what we're going to do today is we are going to befriend. I was talking to a friend of mine about how the word befriend is much less intimidating than the word love, right? We are going to befriend the parts of ourselves if we're not ready to love the parts of ourselves that we've disowned. And we're going to do that using the principles of holding space, using the principles of when somebody comes to you with their deep, nasty uglies, right? Like I have a friend, she's my go-to shame spiral friend. When I'm like in the depths of the uglies, I call her and I'm like, I just need to tell you how I feel and I'm the worst person and I screwed this up and I'm horrible. And she'll just be like, I'll be like, I'm done. She'll be like, awesome. I love you. You're the best, right? She won't say anything. She'll just hold space for it. So here's the idea. Can we do that for ourselves? can we use those principles when because we're having a lot of inner dialogue with ourselves, right? We're talking to other people all the time, but maybe the conversation we have the most is the one with ourselves. And so maybe if we can change the tenor of that conversation, change the way that we listen, in the same way that we can practice and change the way we listen and hold space for others, we can change our relationship with that part of ourselves. Okay, so going back to the slides. So we've done this. Thank you so much for being so active in the chat. What are 3 aspects of yourselves or qualities that you don't show to others? Okay, so here I did promise I would give you more resources on parts work or internal family systems. We haven't even scratched the surface of what this work is. I think it's really interesting. Richard Schwartz is kind of the father or the founder of this idea of internal family systems. And so his book, No Bad Parts, he has other books as well, is a great intro. This website is also a great resource if you're interested. And then my shame spiral friend I'm talking about is Britt Frank. And her Instagram talks a lot about parts work. She talks a lot about parts work, and she does in a very, very accessible way. So these are all great resources if you're interested in learning more about this work. Okay, so your 3 hidden qualities. And this is the framework. And whenever I put these frameworks out, they're kind of words that make sense to me. And so if the words kind of feel a little off to you and you want to change them, that's always possible and valuable, right? Like none of what I do is set in stone. And in fact, anything that I say that you think is interesting, awesome. Anything that I say where you're like, no, that doesn't resonate at all, feel free to throw it out, including this framework. If you're like, this is hokey, I don't want to use it, feel free to change it or throw it out. But this is a framework that I've found has been really helpful to me. And it starts like this, and we'll go over it a couple of times and break it down into its component parts. So it starts with, there is a part of me that is. And think about those words that you shared in the chat. Like you've already acknowledged, like there is a part of me that is deep. There is a part of me that is jealous. There is a part of me that is rigid. There is a part of me that is envious. And this step is really, really powerful. I don't like this aspect of me because, and this will really go to what you've been told and what you've been taught about that aspect of you, either by kind of the society at large or specifically the people who raised you or the people you were around in your formative years, or even the people you're around in your adult years. So I don't like this aspect of me because, and then we switch the dialogue. Hello, jealous part of me. I actually fill this out for myself with 2 examples later on in this slideshow. So hello, blank part of me, I see you. What do you want to say? I'm sorry that you haven't been listened to in the past. You make sense and I appreciate you. Now you might be just like, are you kidding, Vanessa? Like, there's no way. There's no way I'm going to say this to this part of me, but bear with me. Let's do it step by step. So that first principle of holding space, acknowledging, sitting with it, what is, without trying to change it. In Buddhist philosophy, it's being with the arising moment. Having a pause when something comes up to notice what it is before we move to judge it, make story around it, shift it, change it in any way. Just let it be noticed. Just let it be. And that is this deep self-honesty. It requires deep self-honesty, but it's really, really powerful. So just that first step of all of you who responded in the chat to acknowledge there is a part of me that is blank. There is a part of me that is blank. That's actually a big deal. To just be like, there you are. Hello, part, I see you. All right, next step. Notice. This is the judgment arising. So notice any judgment arising in you. So this is the part where we say, I don't like this aspect of me because. Let's keep going and we'll circle back in the examples. Resist the temptation to fix. This is what I was talking about before. Resist the compulsion to immediately say, I'm really jealous, but I'm working on it. I don't like this part of me and I'm trying to get rid of it as quickly as possible. I'm trying to minimize it as much as possible. That is the opposite of embracing it. And what we think when we embrace something is it's going to grow. But in fact, when we acknowledge it, when we embrace it, when we allow it to be, its power actually diminishes over us. And so we can take, again, this principle of holding space for other people. And so a lot of times with one of my children, who I shall not name, she needs to express herself in a really big way. And she needs to express herself in a way where what she says sometimes is not literally true, right? Sometimes is not literally true. Like, everybody hates me. The whole world is against me. And so in my compulsion to try and make her feel better, if I say that's not true, I invalidate her, I diminish, I try and squash it down. I try and squash down this big thing to something that's like more palatable and smaller. And what happens is that I don't let her get it out. And so it still festers. And so this idea of we have to tamp it down, actually tamping it down can sometimes create more pressure and create more sort of energy in this feeling. And so resisting the temptation to fix something and being like, I'm working on it, I'm trying to make it less, like I'm resisting it. It's like, no, like, own it. This is part of who I am. This is part of who I am. Let it just be what it is for a moment. Let it give us the information that we need from it. Okay, next. Receive. This is the place where we get the information from this part of ourselves. So, hello, blank part of me, I see you. What do you need, want to say? I'm sorry that you haven't been listened to in the past. You make sense and I appreciate you, because all of these parts of ourselves have information about us, what we need, who we are, how we want to express ourselves, and how we want to walk through the world. We are all unique beings with all of these component parts that make us up. And sometimes we think these are the good parts and these are the bad parts. But there are no good parts and bad parts. There are only different parts of us that come from different places that, if we can integrate, can serve us. So let's go to it. Let's go to these examples. So this is just a recap, right? There's a part of me that is, I don't like this aspect of me because, hello, blank part of me, I see you. What do you need, want to say? I'm sorry that you haven't been listened to in the past. You make sense and I appreciate you. Again, you can change this framework to suit your voice in any way, but you kind of get the idea of the different aspects of it. Okay, I'm going to go back to this after I do the next slides. All right, I promised you that I would do an example, and then because I'm running through this pretty quickly, if anyone feels like they want to give an example, maybe someone feels inspired to give an example. So there is a part of me that is jealous. Some of you said jealous. And this part of me is a part of me that I've hated. I hate it when that feeling comes up. I feel like, oh, why? You're going to laugh. I do so much inner work, right? I'm such a good person. I'm such a kind person. Why am I so jealous all the time of certain things as they come up in certain ways? And, oh, I just hate it. I just want to tamp down that feeling. Okay, so that's how I used to feel. And now I'm like, okay, no, we're not going to tamp it down. We're going to understand it. I'm going to understand you, jealous part of me. Like, I see you. Talk to me. Talk to me, jealous part of me. Okay, so I don't like this aspect of me because I was always told it was bad to be jealous. It was valued to be generous, selfless, not focused on myself, not focused on my ego, never just being so self-centered. I was told as a kid a lot. People were like, oh, she's so high on herself. I was like a ballerina and I had posture. And so I was very shy. So I came off as aloof, I think. And so a lot of the feedback I got as a kid was, oh, she's so high on herself. And so what I received was like, oh no, people don't like people who are high on themselves. People don't like people who are confident. People like people who will always put other people first, don't focus on themselves, and don't draw attention to themselves. and definitely aren't jealous of other people. They're always generous and happy for other people. That is what I thought the good girl was. Okay, but this part of me is still here, and there's a reason this part of me is still here. So it's like, okay, all right, you're here. You're not going away. Let me talk to you. Let me talk to you, jealous part. Okay, hello, jealous part of me. I see you. What do you want to say to me? And I realized this took me a while to figure out, lots of conversations with people. I was like, oh, I want to show you what you want in life. When you see someone else who has achieved something and you're jealous of them, there is some aspect of what they're doing that reflects what you want. I am helping to point you in that direction of what you want. Also, I want you to reach higher and not hold yourself back from your ambitions. I don't want you to keep yourself small in order to satisfy this don't ruffle any feathers, don't make anyone feel bad by shining. And so this jealous part of me, now whenever it comes up, I've befriended it. I'm like, oh, hello, jealous part of me. Thank you for showing me what I want in life. Thank you for showing me which direction I want to be pointed in. And now all of a sudden, this part of me is serving me, is helping me to see and push and grow and know which direction I want to go in. And so now when that sensation comes up, I say, yeah, tell me what you have to say. You make sense. I appreciate you. Tell me what you have to say. All right, we're going to go to one more example. All right, here's another example. There's a part of me that's really conflict averse. I hate conflict. I have a really hard time at the restaurant, if the order is incorrect, telling the server that my order was incorrect. Because it like, I literally feel it rise in my body, and I gotta like stop my share for a second to see if anyone, show of hands, is really conflict averse and doesn't like that kind of, doesn't like that kind of feeling, right? Like, I just hate that feeling so much. And so like, I will avoid conflict at all costs. And so like, all right, I don't send the dish back at the restaurant. No big deal. No big deal. But then also in my life, I have not brought up things with family for fear of conflict that needed to be brought up, that were really ultimately the right thing to do for my family system and for my family, particularly with my brother, right? Like, things that I am like, I have been avoiding this conversation for years because I'm not comfortable with the way it makes me feel, even though a deep part of me knows that this conversation needs to be brought up. All right, so let's go back to the example. So like, the jealousy one, I've worked through quite a bit, but this one still gets me. So I'm like, I'm feeling it in my body already. Okay, so like, I don't like this aspect of me because I end up avoiding hard conversations with people I love. That ultimately makes our relationship more distant. The result of not having those conversations is the wall of unsaid things that sits between me and someone I love. And so it's like, okay, there's a lot of shame, right? Like, I'm kind of past the shame with the jealousy, but there's a lot of shame. So I just want to name the fact that when we say hello to the parts of ourselves that we don't like to show to other people, a lot of shame can come up. It's like, oh yeah, that makes me like shame. It makes me feel ashamed that that's who I am. And so can we start to soften that shame by being like, all right, let's talk to that part of ourselves. Like, hello, conflict averse part of me. I see you. I see you. What do you need or want? I want to tell you that I was taught to be a good girl, to not ruffle any feathers. I really seek to be liked, and it's really hard for me to break through that training. It makes me super uncomfortable, and my whole body shakes at the idea of conflict. Like, I understand you. I know where you're from. I know where you came from, and I acknowledge that you're there. So, okay, now we've got a starting point. Now we've got a starting point. You make sense. You make sense, and I appreciate you. Okay. So when we have these qualities, the first thing that we have to do is befriend them, listen to them, have a conversation with them, acknowledge that they exist. Don't ignore them, push them away. Be like, all right, I see you. What do you need to tell me? What do I need to learn about you? Where did you come from? How did you serve me? So that we can make a decision to do one of three things. We can either say, okay, you're a part of me that I want to embody more. Or there's aspects of you that I want to embody more. And that's my jealousy example, right? Yeah, there's parts of you. I'm gonna take this thing that felt shameful, and I'm gonna get the information. I'm gonna realize, actually, I need to embrace that part of me and not push it away, because it's giving me good information about where it wants to point me. The next example, or we can decide, once we've befriended it, gotten to know it, listened to what it has to say, understood what it means for us, where it came from. You don't serve me anymore. And I'm actually ready to release you. And that's the work I have with my conflict aversion, right? All right. Being conflict averse like this, I understand where you're from. I see you. I acknowledge you. I understand why you've developed in me to keep me in a place where I felt like, yeah, this is who I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be the good girl. But you don't serve me really anymore, and I'm ready to release you. So I'm going to begin my practice of releasing you in very small increments, going into that place of slight discomfort and saying, okay, even though it makes me uncomfortable to have this conversation with my family member, I'm going to do it. Because I know that this is a part of me that has developed that I'm ready to step out of and move away from and evolve out of, little by little. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice. Or I can have a different relationship with you now that I accept you. That's actually more apt to the jealousy example, right? I can have a different relationship with you now that I see you, I know you. And all of these steps begin with holding space to hear the truth. Let's see if I have this slide here. No, sorry, going up the wrong way. Speaking to your inner child like you would your own child. Sorry for the typo. It's a little goofy to have this dialogue, but it's actually really useful. It's really useful to be like, yeah, conflict averse part of me, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Or little Vanessa, I'm sorry that you had to always be the good girl. I'm sorry that you didn't feel like you could ever be like, no, that doesn't work for me. Or, yeah, that sounds really hard. Or that was really hard. These are things that we can say to other people, but we can also say that to ourselves. Oh, little Vanessa, that's really, really, really afraid of having this conversation. I'm right here next to you. You can do it. You can do it. I know it feels really tough. I know that your whole body is shaking, and I know that you feel the energy rising in your whole body, but I believe in you. I believe in you. I understand why you feel this way, but I believe in you. You can do it. Just the way you would help a scared child face a challenge. You can help your scared child face a challenge once you see it. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And I'm going to open it up for either questions or anyone who's interested in sharing